Okay, I think we're gonna get started. All right, so welcome to Leap Canada. My name is Rena, and I am one of the logistics coordinators of Leap, and I'm gonna be hosting this panel, Debunking Misconceptions. I'm super glad you guys could join us today. So we're gonna start off first with kind of an overview of what Leap is. If I can get a change, there we go. All right, so just to give a brief overview of the format, we're just going to go over what LEAP is and introduce our panelists for debunking misconceptions. Most of the panel will be the pre-submitted questions that we got from the registration forms, and at the end, there will be an open Q&A. So during the panel, you can submit your questions in the Q&A chat, and if our panelists have time, they can answer directly on the chat, or at the end, it'll be like dedicated 10 minutes just for your additional questions. All right, so just to go over what LEAP is. So LEAP stands for Learn, Empower, Assist, and Prepare. And our mission statement is to equip secondary students with knowledge, skills, resources to really help them ease the transition from secondary school to their post-secondary lives. So one of the main ways we're doing this is through our weekly webinars that we're hosting. So this webinar is debunking misconceptions and also a specific university, and the second half will be on UBC, and this will be on for the next couple weeks. So thank you guys all so much for joining us on today's panel. So we're gonna start with introducing our panelists now. If our first panelist, Constanza, can go ahead and introduce herself. If our first...
Hi.
Yeah, okay, great,
sorry.
thank you.
My computer tech things. So hi everyone, my name is Constanza, and I'm a student at the University of Toronto. I'm doing population health and psychology. I volunteer with Kids Help Phone, and outside of that, I do work as a disability justice community organizer and activist, so you can definitely check out some of that work if it interests you. And I don't know, in my spare time, I love to dance and mental health stuff, and I'm kind of into theology lately, so kind of another thing. And yeah, I look forward to answering these questions and debunking misconceptions.
Awesome. Super nice to meet you, Constanza. Our second panelist. You can go ahead and introduce yourself whenever you're ready.
Oh, sorry, I was talking, but it was muted. Hi, my name is Saad. I'm a second year at the University of Western Ontario. I'm currently doing health sciences. So in my first year, I was a health and wellness commissioner at Western. Like health and wellness, mental health, that's a really big thing for me. I also participate in HOSA Canada. I don't know if a lot of you are aware of that, but it's more like a DECA for sciences. Currently, I'm at Markham Civil Hospital. I live in Markham, so I'm over there just volunteering for COVID-19 reliefs. In my spare time, I'd like to play basketball and fantasize about traveling, and hopefully one day I got to do that.
Yeah, sounds great. Oh, by the way, where if you wanted to travel, where would you, just out of curiosity, where would you go?
Honestly, like I've been to like Paris and stuff, but like France, but I really want to travel like like the south side where it's like super French, no one knows English, like the cute little houses and stuff. That
Yeah, that sounds interesting. For sure. I'm excited to travel too. Okay, Sam.
Hi, everybody. My name is Sam. I just graduated virtually from McGill University, and I'm now working as an intern at NextGen HQ, where we cultivate the resources, education, mentorship for aspiring entrepreneurs. And after the internship, I'll actually be going to complete my master's at Imperial College in London. And yeah, and I just wanted to share real quick. A lot of my friends, when they entered university, they had a really clear idea of what they wanted to do, but that wasn't the case for me. I was really curious, and I obtained internship experience in multiple industries, for example, sports management, asset management, and consulting. And some of my interests include basketball, fitness, entrepreneurship, and snowboarding.
That's awesome. Yeah, that's really good advice. Just gaining different experiences. Yeah, that's what I'm trying to do now, because I don't know. I have no clue what I want to do. So yeah, that's definitely relevant. And our final panelist for today.
Hey everyone, my name is Medak. I go to McMaster University. I'm going to my second year of life sciences, so everything's still pretty fresh in my mind. I did a bunch of stuff in high school, like student council, Model UN, and I was also a kindergarten teacher assistant, which was crazy. I would never do it again. I hate kids now. But also in first year, I did a couple of research competitions, and especially one at McMaster called Synapse. It was pretty fun, but we never won any of the competitions, but it was good for experience. And now I'm an incoming pharmacy assistant starting August. I'm pretty excited for that. Yeah, and on a less serious note, I really, really love visual art and painting, especially oil painting. I love baking, and I barely like do any physical activity, but if I do, it's tennis. So I thought I'd just throw it in there. Yeah, that's pretty
Great
much
to
it.
hear. Sorry, I just wanted to catch your name one last time just so I can make sure I pronounce it correctly.
It's Malak, but whatever you say is fine, yeah.
Okay, great. Thank you, Malak. Okay, great. So overview of our panel discussion, we're breaking it down to grades, university culture, work-life balance, and transition to university. And this was based on the submissions to the questions from our attendees. So make sure you get the questions in if you want a specific or like answers or discussions based on what you're interested in. So starting with grades. So one misconception about university is that getting a 4.0 GPA is impossible. Yeah, so we want to hear from you guys what you think. So Malek, if you want to start us off.
Yeah, so I don't think it's impossible. It's definitely not impossible because there's people out there with 4.0 GPAs, but it's definitely not easy. I don't have a 4.0 GPA because like I started off on the wrong foot at the beginning. I was very disorganized, a huge procrastinator, and I didn't develop the right habits that would get me to the top. So you should always aim for the top if you want to succeed. You have to also understand that success does not linearly equal a 4.0 GPA. You can do better, like a lot better than other people have done in their lives with a 4.0 GPA. Always remember that. But in order to succeed, you'll need to have the right discipline you need to have the right discipline for it, and you have to develop the effective habits that would get you to the top. And also remember those SMART goals that they always taught us in middle school, and they would like shove down our throats, specific, measurable, all that. It actually works if you try it. Like it's really effective. You just need to be consistent and have the right discipline. That's what I have to say about that. Yeah.
Yeah, for sure. And also like what you said, like how you mentioned how like your first semester at the beginning, things were, you know, like with the transition, things you might not get as high of marks as you want. And that's something that's a little different than high school, is that GPA is accumulative all 4 years. So, you know, like everything matters, but at the same time, like you said, like you shouldn't stress too much on it. So if we could get Sam to also talk a little bit on this topic.
Yeah, for sure. Malak, thank you for sharing that. It was super insightful. I have to, plus one to everything that she just said. Some of the advice that I'm about to provide with you guys, I didn't do any of this when I first got to McGill. I'm just being honest. So, assuming you guys are going to be attending classes virtually, but, I believe that at some point, hopefully you guys will be in the lecture hall. I would recommend you guys to attend all classes. And I know what you guys must be thinking. It's like, okay, that's not too hard, right? But if you're going to school in Canada and it's the middle of the winter and it's like minus 30 degrees outside, you're not going to want to go to class. And the thing with university is what's different from high school. A lot of the lectures are recorded. So it's easy to be like, okay, I can just stay at home and watch this later. But I would seriously recommend you to not do that, because it makes a huge difference being in the classroom and actually engaging with your fellow students and your professor. And also, just to add on to that, obviously being realistic, you probably won't go to every TA session each week, right? But I'd recommend going to at least one per week, because that gives you repetition, and it really allows you to fully understand what it is the professor is trying to get across. And finally, be in contact with your professor, right? Ask them questions during class and also go to their office hours. A lot of times I actually noticed that, before exams or before a midterm, if you would say something like, hey, professor, exam or the midterm exam. So yeah, those are kind of my 2 cents about this GPA situation.
For sure. Those are really good advice. And also about the class thing. Yeah, I also did not follow through with that first year. Wish I did though, because it's just gonna become like a game of catch up once you have that mentality of just like, I'll watch it later, which is not, it's not sustainable for sure. Okay, so we're gonna move on to our second topic, if it comes up. Oh yeah, so this is continuing on grades. So another misconception that a lot of students have on university is that depending on who your professor is, this will largely affect your grades. So maybe this time, Sam, do you want to start?
Yeah, absolutely. I think with this, it really depends, right? And I think I'm sure all of you guys tuning in, you're all very smart people. You are, attending this webinar firstly, but I think it's really important to understand your strengths and your weaknesses because, obviously if you are someone who's really good at writing essays, right, you're not going to want to attend a class where all the assessments are like written exams. That wouldn't make any sense. On the other hand, if you're not good at writing papers, it wouldn't make any sense to sign up for a class where the final exam, 80% of the grade is based on one paper, right? That just wouldn't make any sense. So yeah, I think here is just understand your strengths and weaknesses and reach out to previous students who have attended, these classes before and ask them what the assessments are like.
For sure. That's a really good point. Malak, do you want to continue?
Yeah, so that was really good what you said about what Sam said about strengths and weaknesses. I also want to add to that as students, we need to make sure that we know how to hold ourselves accountable as well, and not shift the blame on others just because we got a bad mark or something. In whatever case, nobody affects your grades as much as you do. No one is writing that test or assignment other than you. So it's actually a very problematic mindset. So because profs and TAs come in all shapes and forms, and we have to adapt to each scenario. We have to, because this is a higher level of education, a lot is expected from us. And so we have to live up to those expectations if we want to do well. We need to know how to adapt to scenarios that are difficult for us, and we will thrive through. So yeah, that's a good point for sure. Just being able to adapt no matter what, and not having that mentality of, because I think mentality plays a huge effect on how you do. If you think I can't do this or I can do this and it's in my control, there's a big impact. Yeah. So yeah, I really like that. Okay, so we're gonna move on to the second topic, which is on culture. So another misconception is that the idea of a university student, you'll be constantly studying, getting minimal sleep, broke, and just the environment is just toxic where everyone around you is just really competitive. So maybe Saad, if we can hear from you on this topic.
Yeah, definitely. So like Malek was saying last time, when you give in to like those myths and that mindset, you're setting yourself up for failure. So when I went into my first year, I always thought like, oh, as a university student, like you're not supposed to get sleep, you're not supposed to, like have time for anything else. So that's what I was doing my first year. I wasn't getting a lot of sleep, and it obviously negatively affected me. But in terms of the GPA stuff, obviously everyone is trying to get a high GPA because it is university. Everyone obviously wants to do well, but it's surprising how many students are trying to help each other. Before I even went into my first year in September, like every university has like those like class of 20 something like social group pages, and everyone's like, hey, is there a bio group chat, is there a math group chat, who wants to make a group chat? And I was in all these group chats, and whenever there's a quiz or like an assignment or a test, people would be asking questions, people would be sending pictures of answers, like everyone was helping each other. So obviously everyone's trying to get a high mark, but people weren't very, like they weren't trying to, like ignore people. They were trying to give answers, and that helped me a lot, like joining those like group chats, because like I remember like being very stressed before a midterm or a test, and the thing I needed was exactly a question that someone else asked in the night before. So like, yeah, it is like you need a high GPA, but there's always going to be people helping you.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, like what you said, like if you have a question about something, probably someone else will.
Yeah, exactly.
That's definitely something you can help each other out with. And I think group chats will be really important, especially now more than ever with classes being online and people really depending on that. So yeah, thank you. And Constanza, if we can hear from you as well.
Yeah, for sure. So I think with this one, I wish I could say it's like entirely a myth, but there's definitely some truth to this. I mean, there is sort of this culture that glamorizes this lifestyle, but it really doesn't mean that you have to, right? So my advice would be reach out early to supportive spaces on campus, or like they were saying, like chats or things like this that will help you. And yeah, like take it upon yourself to pace yourself, to know yourself. As long as you have it in your mind that this isn't the goal, this isn't the ideal, this is just something that larger culture said was good, but it's a recipe for disaster long term, right? Your undergrad is 4 years at the end of the day, and most of us are going on to do masters and other things. So like that's like a whole decade of your life spent this way, and like ask yourself, do you really want to spend it this way?
Yeah, for sure. I like the term you use, like glamorizing, because I think a lot of people, they kind of see this image as of university students, like all these terms like broke, minimal sleep, but it's really not glamorous at all, and it makes you feel really depressed, and
it's
not
really bad for your mental health. Yeah,
exactly. So it's
Horrible.
really not something you should strive for just because it's kind of like what is portrayed. And even if there are some people like that, it's definitely not sustainable, and yeah, not healthy. Oh, okay. I can't get rid of this. Okay. Give me 1 second. Let me just. Sure. Okay, great. Okay. Let's move on to the second misconception on culture, which is kind of similar. It's that certain universities, so depending on what university you choose, some universities are more cutthroat or competitive, i.e. it'd be harder to get a 4.0 or like a high GPA at one university than another. So if we can hear on Saad from this topic.
Yeah, so like one of the other panelists mentioned before, like TAs and profs, they're all different. Every university has their own profs, so you have to adjust yourself. I wouldn't say like I've had a lot of friends from different universities, and generally like the content isn't too different, but I would just say that like when you're presented in a situation like that where you feel like a course is harder, you just have to adapt and work harder yourself. So just because you we have a lot of like myths and like rumors that like certain universities harder, I don't necessarily that is like entirely true. Obviously some universities have a higher standard, and there's the whole system of bell curving, which is a whole different topic, but realistically, like as long as you try hard, study smart, you can get a high mark.
Yeah, for sure. It's again all about that mentality. And Constanza, I know you're from U of T, so I think some people might be wondering that, especially about like certain schools like U of T. So maybe we can hear from you.
Yeah, I mean, I definitely heard that from other friends, that there was that perception that U of T was just extra competitive, and that you had to work so much harder to get that 4.0 GPA. I would actually say, having been to U of T, that it's very program dependent. And so like more than looking at the institution, like you got to look at the whole picture. Look at your institution, look at your specific program, do your research, and your best source of information is like students that graduate from that program, or like senior students in that program. And just whenever you're making a decision, base it on everything, not just like what you hear, like the culture, because at the same time, maybe some content may be more difficult, but there may be more support, or the culture may be a better fit for you. So definitely, don't shy away from something if it's the right program for you or the right culture for you, but don't also like choose something just because it seems more prestigious. At the end of the day, great people have gone to do great things from universities that get like a bad rep, or like, oh, that's just an easier place, and it's just not true at all.
For sure. Yeah, it's not like the university that makes you, like that cheesy saying, it's like you that
It's
makes
you.
you. Exactly.
Definitely.
Yeah, great. Thank you so much for sharing that. Okay. And moving on. So again, on kind of like uni culture. So again, one of the misconceptions kind of related to the other ones is that a lot of university students skip classes. So we want to know if this is true or not. Maybe Constanza, do you want to start on this one?
For sure. What did I say for this one? Oh, I said that it's sort of like a myth. Okay. I don't know. I feel like students try to go to all the classes. I feel like that's almost everybody's intent. But I would be, I would be hesitant to say, like, don't ever skip a class. Like, really find a way to adapt, if that makes sense. Prioritize. Like Sam was saying earlier, some classes are recorded, maybe some are not. So prioritize the ones that you have to be in person for, and make sure you stick to a schedule and you can catch up on those later. But if that doesn't work for you and you know you gotta be there to like learn the stuff or you're gonna fall behind, then really make an effort to not skip anything. But be flexible with yourself is what I'm saying. Don't like beat yourself up if you like missed a class. But I would say that all in all, it's a myth that the students skip out, because you gotta learn what you gotta learn, right? So
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, I like how you mentioned like it's a lot more flexible. University is a lot more flexible than high school. So that could be a good thing or a bad thing, depending on how self-disciplined you are. But
exactly.
yeah, for sure. It could be a good thing if you just kind of use that flexibility to your advantage. So sometimes if you need to skip, even though, yeah, or change things around for sure, or yeah,
I feel like at first that freedom may take over. You're like, oh, there's this world of opportunities. I'm just gonna like chill until the exam, and then no, that may not work out very well.
Yeah, exactly. So yeah, be realistic with how disciplined you can be. Yeah, and if Saad, do you have anything you want to add on this topic?
Yeah, so like how she wrote like can lead to a more stressful end of term. So especially with like university transitioning online and a lot of the courses being pre-recorded, so not necessarily being live, it's really easy to just be like, oh, I'll watch it. Oh, I'm not gonna wake up. I'll watch it next week, and then next week comes, and then you missed that lecture. I'll just watch it like a few weeks later, and then now it's midterm season. You were behind on like 5 lectures. Now you're cramming 5 lectures worth of like 5 lectures and like right before your midterm, and that can be so much more stressful. So I would just say like just be on top of your stuff, because especially with everything being online, like skipping class is one thing in person, but with the whole COVID-19 situation, like it was so much easier to miss out on your classes. So as long as you're on top of your stuff, like you'll be
Yeah, for sure. I feel like with COVID and online classes, it's a lot easier to procrastinate, be like, I'll do it later, which,
yeah.
but also to be more flexible to your advantage. Okay, so we're just gonna talk about the last misconception on this topic, which is that in university, you will lose kind of high school relationships and friendships and just people you knew in high school. Maybe we can get Saad, if you wanna talk a bit about this.
Yeah, honestly, it also really depends on how strong those relationships were leaving high school. So think about me, like my high school friends, I've known them since I was like in grade 1. So we've been very close, and as long as you're really close with them, you'll make the effort, because a lot of my friends, we did go to like, I went to Western, some went to Queens, some went to America, but when it was time for like Christmas, Thanksgiving, the weekends, we made sure, we planned to come back the same weekends. When it came for winter break, even the summer too, we planned to meet up. So as long as you like hold on to those relationships, like you'll be fine, because like you always see like those memes that like, oh, those best friends that you don't talk to for a month, so when you see them, like everything's fine. But so like as long as you like have a close relationship to them, like university won't get in the way.
For sure. Constanza, do you have anything to add?
For sure. I mean, I'd say again, it's so personal, and that there's no like right answer here, really. But I would say this, all in all, this is like a very transformative period in your life. So you may sort of lose some friendships or feel like you're moving on from them, and that sometimes causes feelings of like distress, or like you're uncomfortable, you're wondering why, but that's okay, because there's just such a new world opening up for you. But I would definitely see it more like it's being added, rather than like you're losing, you know, you're gaining possibly new relationships, you're meeting new people, like you're growing up. So maybe it's a bit of both, and some people stay friends with like 1 or 2 high school friends in the long run, like into their 30s, but some people don't, and that's okay too.
Yeah, exactly. Like what you said, how it's okay. It's just change. Like it's just a period of change. You might lose some, you might gain new friends. Yeah, and also what Saad said, I really liked how you said just if you put in the effort. And I think, yeah, that's definitely more needed, especially since you might not go to the same school anymore. Effort will definitely be very helpful. Okay, so we're gonna move on to work-life balance. I think a lot of secondary students are wondering, a misconception they have is that you have to study all the time, you have no free time if you want good grades, and therefore it's not possible to have a social life. Like, you know, like the triangle where it's like sleep, good grades, social life, you can only have like 2 out of 3, or like it's impossible to have good grades and a social life. So maybe we can start with Sam on this question.
Yeah, so I definitely think this is a myth, but you know, with that said, it is very difficult to have a really good social life, to get really good grades, and get a lot of sleep, right? And I just wanted to share 2 really key insights that really benefited me throughout my undergraduate career. First one is you want to identify your non-negotiables. Now, what do I mean by this? It's like, for me, for example, one of my non-negotiables was that every night I had to get at least like 5.5, 6 hours of sleep, like no matter what, whether it's the night before an exam, I'm definitely getting my 6 hours in. And then also number 2, to become a master of your calendar. So I didn't do this in the very beginning when I was a freshman, but I really advise you to do so, is that every Sunday, write out 3 goals that you have for the week and prioritize them in order. And then once you hit that Sunday, reflect, right? Think about which goals that you have achieved and what you could do better that week. So those are my 2 insights that I think would really help you guys.
Yeah, that's really good. I think that would be really helpful even for me. I really like your point on like the non-negotiables, just setting like hard like deadlines, like, or things that you cannot negotiate with yourself, like the sleep, for instance, because once you start negotiating like, oh, I'll just sleep later, end up like procrastinating every like part of your life, and yeah, it's not sustainable. So something, yeah, you should not negotiate with yourself is just getting at least a bare minimum of sleep every night for sure. And Constanza, do you want to share a bit?
Yeah, so everything Sam said is absolutely amazing, and definitely like get on that. And I also wanted to talk on this point a little bit about what I mean when I say like check in with yourself. So sometimes when you're like going into university, you may still not have an entire sort of bird's eye view of like where you fit in society. You may, but you may not. And by that I mean, okay, I'm going to explain it this way. I don't know if anyone has heard how COVID was being explained as a great equalizer, meaning suddenly, you know, societies, economies are sort of crumbling, but at the same time, they're becoming more equal. But that's so not true. In fact, COVID is bringing up inequalities even more. So somebody that was already struggling with jobs now is struggling even more. So university to high school is actually very similar. If there's anything in your life that, you know, so sort of like the social determinants in your life, it's kind of going to peak. And I don't mean that to scare you, but I mean that to say, like, really take a moment to think about what those factors in your life are and don't internalize it. So for example, if you're a student that is financing your own way through university, that's very different than a student who has maybe parental support or some other type of financial support. So you may need to take maybe a course less to give yourself that flexibility to work that part-time job instead of piling everything on. And that's just, you know, that's what's wrong with society, sure, but I can sit here and be like, you can hold yourself to that same expectation, because eventually that's really gonna like, you're not gonna see your true potential come out if you don't take these things into consideration. So I think that's what I mean when I say check in with yourself, with your life circumstances, with these factors, and then plan it out again in a way that's sustainable. 4 years of this, so really gotta sit with yourself, think about it, and reach out, because there are supports out there, so you're not alone.
For sure. Those are great points. Thank you so much for sharing. Did you have other points? I see that you wanted to talk a little bit about maybe group studying or other tips, or anybody else want to share on this conception before we move on? Okay, so we're just going to move on. Thank you so much, Sam and Constanza. Okay, so on work-life balance, so students in competitive programs, so in high school, so IB, AP, TOPS, which I think is for science, they have an easier time in university compared to students in more like mainstream public school settings. So if we could get Sam again, do you want to share your insight on this?
Yeah, absolutely. So I did the IB diploma while I was in high school, and I think this really depends on what major / faculty you choose to get into, right? So from my personal standpoint, I feel like the IB prepared me really well for writing essays, for writing really, really long essays. So honestly, it didn't prepare me too well for econ courses, but when I took courses outside of my faculty where I had to write a bunch of papers, writing all these papers back in high school really paid dividends. So yeah, just to summarize real quick, I think it really just depends on what you study.
Yeah, that's good.
Can I also add one thing on this? I have a friend who actually, because I'm in life sciences, I have a friend who actually did bio AP and chem AP, and I didn't. I remember having like a huge gap between us. Like I would say that to a certain extent this would be untrue, but it is true as well. I felt like my friend had an easier time catching up with some more difficult concepts. So, but that was just for bio and chem. I don't know about other courses. So yeah, that's my input on this.
Yeah. Because some of the courses in high school, AP is actually like university level, or like courses or like exams at least. So that could definitely have some kind of, at least they have some sort of starting advantage, but they might not necessarily do better in the course overall, but definitely have some sort of advantage there. And Constanza, did you want to share a little bit?
I mean, I don't think I have too much to add at this point. I did some AP courses in high school. I definitely think being sort of exposed to that material definitely gives you more time to digest it, definitely sets you up, like, how to prepare, and you get more of that individualized education. But in terms of work-life balance, there's really not, it doesn't prepare you any better on that end. And I think that's the biggest challenge in university life. It's barely academic and it's more everything else. So
for sure. Yeah, it's beyond like the courses itself. It's like your whole lifestyle as well. So,
exactly.
Yeah, for sure. Thank you. Okay, so now we're going to talk about general transition to university. So one of the conceptions or misconceptions that people have is that if you're an average student at high school, getting B's, you have maybe an additional EC on the side, you won't get into your dream university. So if we could hear from the panelists, maybe we can start with Saad.
I won't lie, like marks play a huge role in your admission. So if your program does require like a supplementary or an interview, before they even give that to you, they will look at your marks. But most universities have a cutoff. So let's say you're a dream university and you're just like right at the cutoff. So now when it's time for interview, your interview actually makes a big difference, and so does your application. For example, I'm pretty sure all of you have heard of McMaster Health Science, and that's a really like big program, very competitive. Everyone wants to get into that, and the cutoff for them is 90. And my friend, he was like right 90. He had like a 90.1 average, so he was right there. But his essay was just like amazing. Like, so even though a lot of the students were like 97s, 98s applying to that program, he still got in because once he got after that cutoff, he got into his dream university. So like, yeah, marks are important. You want to be above that cutoff, but once you are above that cutoff, you want to make sure that your application is like very well written, like that, because your application will take, like your supplementary will take your application from like good to like amazing.
For sure. Yeah, that's really good insight. Like I've noticed a lot of competitive programs for university, grades there'll be a cutoff, but once you meet that cutoff, it'll be all the additional stuff. Like having additional percentage once you are beyond the cutoff isn't really relevant as much as like
Exactly, and like a lot of like post-grad schools are like that too.
Yeah, that's a really good point. Yeah, so if we could also hear from Malak, if you have any insights on this topic.
Yeah, so in terms of what's it called, being an average student, I was an average student in high school, and I got by kind of like okay. Like I didn't like see any, like most universities accepted me, everything was fine. I think it really matters most what you do when you get into university rather than will I get into my dream. Of course, it's important to get into your dreams university, but I really believe that what you do in a university matters more than which university you got into. So I really believe that you have to understand, you have to prioritize the right way, kind of thing.
Yeah, for sure. Thank you. And Sam, did you want to add something on this topic?
Yeah, sure. Like Malak mentioned, obviously grades matters to some extent, right? But that's not the only part of the equation. You can also add value in a bunch of other different areas as well. Like you could highlight some of your, involvement in extracurriculars in high school, and they look at that a lot as well. Also, leadership experience and international experience. So guys, do not worry if, say you have an average grade or whatever. It doesn't mean that it's impossible to get into your dream university. You just kind of have to back it up with additional evidence as to why they should accept you.
Yeah, for sure. I agree with that.
And for those who haven't applied to university, like a lot of universities have pages where they're not very advertised, but you can talk about your extracurriculars, like ones that they don't ask about. So I know like Western Guelph does this too, where like it's like a separate page where you just say like, oh, like I'm applying to this program, and even though in your interview and supplementary they didn't ask for it, there's like you can add that, oh, like in my high school I did this and this, and as they're looking at your application, they'll look at this separate application that you submitted, and that's a good factor for you, because I did that and I feel like that helped me get into my university.
Thank you. Yeah, that's a good point. And overall, like all you guys talked about, just when you're applying for university, just look at what the program you're applying to is asking for, whether it be like essays or extracurricular. So don't feel discouraged if you're not necessarily like, you don't think you have the highest grade, because maybe it'll be sufficient and they're actually looking for your other involvements, and that's what sets you apart. Okay, great. Thank you. And another misconception people have is that it's better going to an out-of-province university compared to an in-province university, or the other way around. It's better staying in the province than going to an out-of-province, or just, I guess it's better choosing a university closer to home or farther away from home, or yeah. Again, so if we could start with Malak on this topic.
Yeah, so I feel like this statement is really, it depends on like the individual, and I feel like their financial capabilities as well. I lived in Oakville. In Oakville, Ontario, I chose to apply to Ontario schools only because it was just convenient and practical. I lived like 20-30 minutes away from McMaster University, and so it was very easy. But for those of you who are like choosing out of province, of course, everything comes with its pros and cons in terms of mostly cost, social life, and how it's going to affect your academics, being away from friends and family, stuff like that. So I feel like you have to assess these things and make sure you're making the right decision. But in the end, of course, like I'm not saying going out of province is bad or anything. I'm just speaking from my personal experience. It was easy for me to stay where I am in terms of like the cities and everything. It was not a huge transition. So yeah.
Yeah, that makes sense, for sure. And if we could get Saad to also talk about his perspective.
Yeah, so when I was applying to university, like my last two options really came down to the University of Alberta and University of Western Ontario, and I am an Ontario student. So what I did, and I encourage a lot of students that haven't applied yet when they're applying next year or later, that you should really make like an Excel sheet or like just a chart about the different aspects of university. So for me, one of them was like cost. Another one was like the actual like courses, because sometimes even like the name of the program can be very misleading to what it actually teaches you. So I went into like the programs that I got into, and I looked at the first year courses, second year courses, and what they were about and what they had to offer. Because at the end of the day, you're getting your degree for yourself and what you want to do in the future for your career. And you want to make sure you're picking a program that helps you achieve that goal and has those courses that give you the knowledge to do well in the future. So I had a lot of things, and really depends on you if like family is a big part of you. Like I know a lot of friends that I had at Western, they could only go back like once a semester because, you know, flights are expensive. They can really only go during like long breaks. But I had some friends that lived like in like Oakville too, and they were going back every single weekend back to their family because they needed to. So if you're like a person like that, then maybe out of province isn't the best option for you. So really it's just up to you what you consider is good for you. And if you want to be outside of your comfort zone and you're okay being outside of your family, then out of province is a great option. But at the end of the day, it's up to you and what you want to do in the future.
Yeah, for sure. Thank
I
you.
also, sorry to interrupt, but I also really want to emphasize what Saad said about making an Excel sheet for yourself, or like some kind of Google Doc. Just put everything, all the pros and cons, make a list. Just look at everything, give yourself a visual of what you're getting yourself into. And that way you can really make the right decision, I feel like.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, like writing it out can help sometimes just like clear your mind and just get things in order. And yeah, so I really liked how all of you guys kind of like talked about there's just a lot to consider. There's not one that's better than the other for all instances. Like obviously you have to consider, can you afford it? And then if you can, like obviously like the program, the courses, the convenience, and also what San mentioned, I'm also a Western student. So I'm also from Ontario, but I'm like from Ottawa, which is like a 7-hour drive. Whereas like my friends from Toronto area could just go back like whenever they wanted, but then I had to go back like 3 times a year, you know? So it's definitely something you have to take into consideration if if that's something you are willing to do. Okay, great. Thank you so much. Okay, so we are done with the questions that were submitted ahead of time. So we're going to go on to the open Q&A. So I have some questions from the open chat. Thank you guys. If you guys have any questions, like the attendees, feel free to just keep asking questions and I'll try to get to as many as possible. So one question was, okay, so Emily asked Tassad, you mentioned a bell curve concept earlier. Can you explain a little bit about it? Or anyone can, if you know anything about the bell curve or want to talk about it, you can also go on.
Yeah, honestly, I feel like there might be someone that can explain it better. But basically, when you do like a midterm or a test or something, you basically have all the marks laid out kind of like in a bar graph. And what teachers want to do is, because they kind of want to have like a certain average for every course, so they want to push every mark into more like a bell curve shape. So for example, say like a lot of people did really good on the exam, so it's not really in the shape of bell curve, but it's more like a straight line. So they're gonna adjust the averages for someone, so like it follows like a little bell curve. Or someone if the whole class did really bad, they'll push all the averages up so it follows that bell curve trend. But I'm pretty sure someone else can explain it better. I don't know if I explained it that well.
Yeah, that's a good explanation. But does anyone else want to add anything? Or
I would like to say that, like, but this is personal experience. At McMaster University, we have so many like people talking about like, oh, this test was bell or this course was bell curved and this was, but actually it was not. It's very rare that bell curves actually happen. It has to be like a huge thing that happened that like affected people's marks, and like it's usually up to the prof in the end. Yeah. So it rarely happens. But yeah.
Yeah, I like that you mentioned that, because I just know like after every exam, like all my friends would be like, yep, that's gonna be bell curved because it was really hard. It's just like everyone's go-to excuse. Like but yeah, like it's pretty hard to know if something's actually is, unless like maybe you go directly ask the prof, and maybe it doesn't actually happen that often. But yeah. Anyone else want to add on that question? Or good? Okay, great. So another question from Sophia, she asks, what's one thing you regret not doing during your first year? More like one thing you regret doing, but does anyone want to speak on this?
Yeah. Oh, go ahead.
No, Sam, go ahead. I'll go.
Oh, I was just gonna quickly say that one thing I definitely regret not doing my first year was not joining more student clubs. I feel like, when I got to university, I was pretty one-dimensional, and I was really focused on playing for the university basketball team. And, with that focus in mind, I didn't really explore that many other opportunities. And I'm really thankful I realized that earlier on, so that I did get to eventually, join all the clubs that I initially wanted to. But yeah, just definitely be curious is my piece of advice here.
Thank you. Yeah, and
I have something to say about that as well. Especially in first semester, I was like so excited about like everything. We were making new friend groups and stuff, and things were very exciting. And I remember during that time at the beginning of first semester, we would always like go in groups of friends to like lectures, and we'd sit there and just like talk all the time. And honestly, right now I despise people who talk during lectures, but I regret being that one person who used to talk during the lecture and like not pay attention. Like, why was I even there? But I regret that a lot because my marks suffered in first semester especially. So yeah, that's definitely, I would take it back.
Yeah. Oh yeah, we always look back at the past and we're like, oh, like when you look back now after, it means you've grown though. You've grown and you've learned from that.
For sure.
Yeah. Does anyone else want to share? I think Constanza.
Yeah, I'll add, and I'll actually group it with this other question. I don't know where it is because like a bunch came in the chat, but it was, what's the best piece of advice you've ever received? And the best piece is, do not attach yourself to an institution, an organization, a job. Attach yourself to a vision for your life, like a dream that you hold, something that you're passionate about and you want to do, because at the end of the day, everything else can be very, it can come, it can go, things can happen. And if you attach yourself too much to like your identity to, for example, now that we're talking about universities, and something goes wrong for any reason, you have to suspend your program or you need to move or anything like that, that's a huge defeat. And it's going to deter you from, what you're there for in the first place. So easy to lose, like to lose vision of that. So I would say that's the best piece of advice. And that's my biggest regret. I think in a way, like first year, you're all about the excitement of being part of an institution, and things don't always sort of go as great as you'd imagine. Sometimes universities let you down. It can happen, be prepared for that. So yeah.
For sure. Yeah, I really like what you said about not attaching yourself to certain titles or like institutions, for sure. Not like deriving your worth from kind of like achievements, which can be difficult, but for sure.
Especially first year with all the hype. I mean, it hypes you up and it's nice, but it's also like, just bear that in mind if you can.
For sure. With the hype, and also when you first get your LinkedIn, but yeah, detaching yourself from those. Okay, so I'm gonna group two questions together. I think some people are interested in just like kind of applying to university. So advice when applying, and also certain universities. I think someone mentioned McMaster and McGill. There's particular like competitive averages that they've heard that they need for these schools. I know for McGill especially, there's like pretty high cutoff averages for admission. So maybe we can talk about kind of general advice, but then also maybe on the specific universities as well. Anyone can start with this question.
Yeah, I'd be happy to address the McGill part of it. One thing that I didn't like about McGill's admission process was they didn't, at least for me, they didn't require any essays or anything. All I did was submit my grades. And like I said, I feel like that's a really one-dimensional way to look at things, because if you're only focusing on someone's grades, it's like you're looking at a pool of people and they could all be the same and you can't really differentiate them. So that's one thing that I really didn't like. But, with that said, I did come from international school. So the grades were probably different from, like an in-province or a local school. But just from some of the stuff I heard, I believe that the average is pretty competitive, but I wish I cothe speak more on that, but unfortunately I can't.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, like I know when I applied to McGill also, they only asked for your average, and
Yeah.
I was in province, so maybe I can talk since you were a little bit about that since, but I know like I applied for the business school, Schulich, I don't remember its name. Sorry, I chose Western at the end, but their average cutoff was 95, which is really high. Like I know, like it's crazy. And they didn't ask about any other questions like extracurriculars, so it might not be like the complete give schools the complete image of what students are capable of, but again, every school is different, so you're just going to have to see what program when you're applying to is looking for. Did anyone else want to share on like maybe general university advice, like when applying to universities?
I have, because I saw the question also asked about McMaster as well.
Sure, yeah, go ahead.
I feel like for McMaster, obviously in every single school, it depends. These like competitive averages always depend on the program that you're applying for. But I do recommend for like specifically Ontario schools that you're applying for, just like check out einfo.com. It always has like updated average like admission cutoffs and all that kind of stuff. So it was very helpful. But other than that, it really depends on the program. Yeah,
that's a good point for sure. Okay, so Anna, I really like her question. She asks, what are some important study habits that you formed? Like what study habits do you think helped you the most in succeeding or being sustainable in university? Maybe we can, anyone can answer this one as well.
I guess I'll go. I think like I don't know if you guys heard of Quizlet, but like Quizlet helped me so much because like I'm a science major, so memorization is a big key for me. So there's a lot of my exams were like definition memorization based. So like I remember like me and my friends, we all made a Quizlet together, and it was like every Quizlet had like probably like 100 to like 200 cards each, but everything had a definition. And like whenever you're just like walking to like your class or just waiting at the bus stop, you kind of just pull out your phone, go through the flashcards and I feel like just like reviewing in your spare time, that's actually a really big thing too. Like when I'm just like waiting there for my bus, because like Western's a very big campus, so like you probably end up busing to a lot of your classes. And I was just like pull out my phone, look at some Quizlet things, just trying to like memorize while I'm on the bus. So whenever I had like that free time when I wasn't really doing anything that was very like taxing, I would just pull out my phone, look at my Quizlet, and Quizlet just helped a lot, especially for like my faculty.
Yeah. If you guys don't know, Quizlet, it's just, I think I used it in high school. I think it's like you have like the words and you have like the definitions.
Yeah, it's like a cue card. So like there's like a definition, and then you click on it, it flips over, and it has like the definition at the top. Yeah. Anki too. I use Anki a little bit too. I didn't say Anki because I don't know if anyone used that, because I just found out what that was like a few months ago. But yeah, Anki and Quizlet are both really good.
So those are some good studies. Yes.
I can definitely chime in on this one as well. So I learned this first year, and I literally never went back with my note taking. It's called the Cornell method. I don't know if anyone here has used it or heard of it, but basically you divide your page into 3 sort of boxes with like your note-taking area in the middle. To your left, it's like a keyword cue column, and then at the bottom you summarize. So even if you don't get to the summary after every lecture, like at some point in the day, make that summary, and that's literally your exam prep right there. So it works out for so many reasons, and I'm going to link like a link. It's downloadable, but you can make your own. So that's.
Yeah, those are great study tools. I think we're just gonna wrap up with one last question. So I'm gonna combine this. So one of the questions is, what were some major factors that influenced your choice when picking university? And also, that being said, what's your kind of something that these students, like most of them in high school, can look forward to when going to university? I guess they're not really related actually, but you know what, we'll just get both questions in there. Anyone can answer this. So just kind of what influenced you to choose the university you're at, and also what's something they can look forward to in university, your favorite thing.
For me, I feel like what influenced me was like for McMaster, I felt like first of all, obviously it was very convenient in terms of location for me because I wasn't really planning on going for residence or anything. I wanted to still live with my family. And so I felt like location very much influenced it, but also the fact that McMaster is a very research intensive university. And so I really want to get into research as well. And it's just like you have to nitpick about these little things about the universities you're looking at. What kind of things do you want to look in the future? Where do you want to get yourself into? And just these little things that are known about the universities you might want to look at. And that was it for me for McMaster.
Yeah, for sure. So yeah, convenience and looking at the school, the program itself. Yeah, maybe we can actually get everyone to speak on it a little bit, like what made you choose. Maybe Sam, you can go next.
Yeah, for sure. So there's two main reasons why I initially chose McGill. One was because of the strength of the alumni network. I just heard from a lot of people that, you know, when you reach out to the alumni, they're all super eager to help you out. And I think that's incredibly valuable, and not all schools are necessarily like that. And number two, I just really wanted to explore Montreal as a city. I had never been there before, and I just thought, you know, living in downtown and being on campus, I just thought, you know, that was an experience that I couldn't really give up.
Yeah, that's really interesting points, for sure. And also alumni network will be very useful, like more useful than I like even knew in high school, like just having valuable connections and yeah, networks with people who have already graduated. And Saad, do you want to talk a little bit about why you picked Western?
Yeah, I think one big thing was the campus. Like, I don't know if any of you watching have seen the Western campus, but it's beautiful. And if you're gonna spend the next 4 years at a university walking across campus, like it'd be like a place that you love being at. So like that was also one like big thing for me. Another big thing was just like the resources for students. So whether it was just like the bus pass they offered or just like mental health resources, academic counseling, like I've had a lot of like my cousins and family friends have gone to Western, and a lot of them said that like Western like there is very like student supportive. So that was like another big thing because obviously you're like I'm in Markham, so like I'm 3 hours away from home. If I need help like in person, then like I could count on the Western resources, like the people in person to, you know, help me with whatever I needed.
For sure. And Constanza?
Okay, yes. So I'll tell you a little secret. I wasn't at UTSC first. So U of T has 3 campuses. I originally was at the downtown campus, and immature high school me wanted to be there just because, just because of, you know, like my friends were going there and it seemed more prestigious or whatever. And yes, I cared about those things back then. So I lasted a year in the life science program. I really didn't know myself. That would have been a year better spent getting to really know myself and my skill set and what I wanted to do in my life. And then I transferred, and then I really did pick UTSC. One was like, if you've ever been there, same thing like Saad was saying, it's beautiful there. Like you have the valley. And so a lot of that went into it. Like I realized I needed that in my life. And also their health studies program is very good. It's like renowned. I looked up the faculty and I really was like, yes, this is where I want to be and what I want to do. And they had the co-op option for psych. So I was like, this is my program. So yeah.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, also something to know about U of T, like there are 3 campuses, obviously, like you said, and they're all quite different, and they offer sometimes different like programs.
Very different, for
yeah,
sure.
so definitely look into that and not just kind of group them together because they do offer very different things, for sure. Before we wrap up, maybe we can get like 2 of you to share like something that a lot of these students could look forward to in university. Doesn't matter, any first 2 who have something in mind, just to wrap the Q&A section up. Anything they can look forward to. So.
I mean, I can just quickly say that you can look forward to a lot of growth. And I know you would have thought I said learning too, but also a lot of growth in yourself and just a bigger space to sort of, like the opportunities really are endless. So if you're not sure what they are, like literally search, like look them up and search. And So I think growth and discovering yourself is something like on the positive side to look forward to for sure.
Yeah, that's great.
Yeah,
I was gonna say something.
sorry.
Yeah, sorry. Yeah, you for sure.
I keep interrupting everyone.
Sorry, you can go ahead. Go ahead. Sorry.
Okay.
I'll mention at the end.
I really like what you said about growth, because I feel like for me, it's only been 1 year and I feel like I'm so much more mature from like last year. I don't feel like a child. And I don't know if that makes sense, but it's just there's a sense of freedom that you kind of always long for, because you're getting out of high school and you're like, oh my God, I have to go to class. I have to do this. I have to do that. So it's a sense of freedom that you're given, but at the same time, you will become more mature. And like Constanza said, you will get a sense of growth because of how much you have to control yourself and you have to discipline yourself. So that's a lot of, it's something you should look forward to, honestly, just to become an adult, to become just a grown person, more mature. Yeah.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, great answers. I was thinking more like, you can look forward to joining this club, but you guys went way deep. Like, good for you. I wasn't even thinking like growth. So yeah, thank you guys so much. That's all the time we have for now, but here is the contact information. We linked the LinkedIns of all our panelists. So if you guys still have any more questions, feel free to add them on LinkedIn, message them, follow up with them. Doesn't have to be about the panel. It could just be on other like university or other questions you might have. Also, if you don't follow us already, our Instagram is on the bottom, and Facebook. So they've also been featured on our Instagram. So you guys can also find them there. So make sure you guys reach out to them afterwards and yeah, ask them any more questions that you guys have. I'm sure they'll be glad to answer it. Just to give you guys an overview of the upcoming webinars we have. So next week will be focused more on work, for example, jobs, internships, research. I know there was a question on this that I didn't get to, unfortunately, so it might be answered, probably will be answered next week when we talk on that. And yeah, so hopefully you guys can just stay on the lookout for upcoming webinars. And before we wrap up quickly, just to give a quick shout out to this external opportunity. So actually our next webinar is on UBC, so that's why, you know, we're not advertising, but we're kind of shouting out this organization in BC. So it's the British Columbia Youth Council, BCYC. So they also hold some webinars on mental health as well, and it's also targeted a lot towards high school students as well. So if you guys are interested on learning more particularly on kind of mental health, it's being held on their Instagram on July 25th at 12 p.m. EST. So that's something that you guys might be interested in for sure. And yeah, thank you guys again so much for tuning in for the first half. Thank you to all our panelists for giving such great insight. Really appreciate it. Make sure if you're attending, still have questions, make sure you go add them. You can find them on our Instagram, as I mentioned, and follow up with them. And if you are here staying on for the second half on UBC, just make sure you just stay on and we'll begin shortly. And yeah, thank you guys so much for joining us. If you're just staying for the first half, thank you again to the panelists. It was great hosting you guys. And yeah, thank you guys.